Hi friends, so today's video is going to be about tarot and tarot cards and tarot reading, and hopefully I'm going to be able to share some tips and tricks that I have discovered as a beginner learning tarot that I wish I knew 3 or 4 months ago when I started to really dive into tarot and learn tarot. I have only been doing it for about 3 or 4 months, so I still know nothing. I'm still learning. The whole point of these videos is for us to learn together. So if I get anything wrong in these videos, if there's any sort of information that I screw up, please let me know in the comments below so we can learn from it, so I can learn. We can learn together, the whole point of these videos. But there's a couple of things that I have just discovered through watching countless videos. If I can find the video that sort of gave me that aha moment, I'll link it below. There was a couple of pointers in that video that gave me an aha moment and have just made it so much clearer and so much easier for me to understand tarot. And I wanted to share them with you guys because I've watched many videos, I've read plenty of blog posts, plenty of websites, I have a book here as well, and none of them have said specifically this is what, like they've said you need to do this, but they haven't said this is why. So what I found, and what you guys might find as well if you've been sort of researching and trying to learn tarot as well, is a lot of people will say to get a deck, look at the imagery, study the imagery, and use your intuition and how does it make you feel? But when you're looking at a deck, which is very minimalistic and very simple, 6 knives don't really make me feel much. Do you know what I mean? So what I found in that aspect and in relation to the imagery and studying it and giving it, enticing or encouraging like some kind of feeling from you is the imagery. Modern tarot today, the tarot that we know and use and how we interpret the cards, well, majority of the tarot decks today are based off of the Waite traditional sort of decks, which look a little something, I don't have that deck, but the imagery looks a little something like this. So you might recognize this kind of style of deck. There are so many decks out there. A lot of them are based and have the exact same imagery as the Waite deck. And why that deck is so important is because of that imagery. The images on that deck and the images in a lot of other decks as well. It does just depend on the artist or the illustrations, their interpretations of, that deck and how they want to put their own flair on it. But why the Waite one and why so many people still use this deck today, why it is so common still, that imagery, is because those images tell a story, quite detailed story, and within that story is what the card is about. So when you're pulling a card and you're looking at the story that is on that card, it's jogging your memory and helping you remember what that card is about. So it's helping you learn. Whereas 6 knives doesn't invoke any feeling into me and it doesn't tell a story. Do you know what I mean? So if I can show you an example of the differences between the 6 of knives from my minimalist deck to the Waite one, hopefully you'll understand a little bit more. So I don't have the Waite deck, but my book here, which is the Tarot Your Personal Guide in Focus. This is a really good book if you are learning because it does go over each individual card. It's got color pictures and a bunch of information from like general information to situational information to if it's a person you're asking or thinking about sort of situation. But hopefully I can show you now the difference. Bear with me while I get my camera situated. So this here is my minimalist deck, right? There is 6 knives or swords, and here is the Waite one. So you can see here it's got a lot more detail to it. You've got the 6 swords here. You've got like a family, it seems, on some kind of vessel rowing away somewhere. You've got some hills and some trees. The water is calm, but maybe, I don't know, this person here, presumably it's the mother of this child, is looking a little, slumped over, hood is up, shoulders slim, a little sort of slouched. So maybe they're moving away from some bad situation. I don't know. But can you see how this image tells a story, whereas this doesn't? So every time now I pull, if I had this deck, this card, this image is going to remind me and tell me what this card is about. Let's just read generally what this is about. Transition, physical journey, which they are on a physical journey. Yeah, concerns moving on from a disruptive situation toward a place of healing. I did say she looks a little like sad, her hood is up, her shoulders seem a little slumped. If we're in the middle of strife, it suggests things are going to get better, but it's encouraging us to take the first steps towards that safer place. So that's what they're doing. They're moving on towards a safer place from some hardship. So this image tells you pretty much all of that general information. This one doesn't. Really, there's nothing wrong with minimalist decks if you're into that sort of aesthetic and you're okay with a deck and then just reading up in the book. There's nothing wrong with them, but I have just found now really studying these images and looking at the images in this book and not just reading the text. It's made such a difference. It's made such a difference. I have 2 decks. I've got this minimal small mysteries deck, and I've also got this Ink and Intuition one, which has a little bit more detail in the images, but not as much as the Rider-Waite card, but they do have little elements which give you sort of key clues. So imagery is everything. Imagery is everything to help you learn and to help you learn quicker and to help jog your memory when you pull out that card. It's, I mean, and I guess it depends on how you learn. I am a visual learner, so I find having these images so helpful, and it's just changed everything for me. It's been such a fantastic tip and a fantastic trick. I wanted to share it because I hear all the time people say, study the images, but like, what am I meant to study from 6 Knives? What is there to study from that? I don't know. It doesn't invoke feelings, but in this deck, it's kind of in between. It's got the 6 of Knives, and it's got, if you turn it on its side, it's got a sun in the center, so it's the new horizon that you're, moving towards. So it does tell you, it does hint towards the meaning of the card, but it's not as detailed. If you're starting out with tarot, maybe you don't have a deck yet, try and get one that has a lot of details. Either get the Rider-Waite one or something that is very, very, very similar that has a lot of details in those images. It's going to make it so much easier, especially if you're a visual learner. If you're someone who can retain information from text, then it probably doesn't matter. But I just found that so handy and such a good tip. I'm so glad I found that video. If I can find it, I will try and link it for you. The next thing that sort of did really help me is understanding the difference between major and minor arcanas. Arcana, I believe, is Latin for mysteries or secrets. The major arcana usually talks about our major life elements. So something major in your life is causing great emotions or great upheaval, or something major. It's major arcana. Something major in your life is happening or has happened or is going to happen. And then the minor arcana is your sort of everyday stuff. So understanding that has been very helpful, but also each suit in the minor arcana. The minor arcana is very much laid out almost like just like a typical card deck. I think there's one extra card. Is it the page in there? So you've got ace through to 10, and then you've got page, knight, queen, king. So much like a deck of cards, ace through to 10, then jack, queen, king. So yeah, page is the only difference, I think, or is that meant to be the Joker? I don't know. It's very much the same as like a traditional card deck, right? So you've got 4 suits, but within those suits, each of those suits is connected to an element. So earth, air, fire, water, which is the same elements that you hear about all the time in astrology. They're connected to each different suit. So your coins or your pentagrams is connected to earth, which is sort of practical, grounded, materialistic thing. A lot of people associate that to finances. Your swords is associated to air, which is your like communications and I don't know, I guess learnings, I guess. Let me look that one up. See, I'm still learning this as well, but this book tells you everything you need to know. It's brief, it's easy, but I just want to be sure. Thoughts and communication, yeah. Logic, okay. So yeah, the swords is connected to air. It's your thoughts, communication, it's your logic. So it's your logical side of your brain. Your wands is connected to fire, which is passion and drive and motivation. And your cups is associated to water, which is your emotions. So knowing and understanding that and what the elements mean will give you even more of a little bit of an easier insight as to when, okay, I pull up the Seven of Cups. So this is definitely going to be something about emotions. I believe the Seven of Cups is opportunity, or you've got a lot of yourself into a lot of different little things and you're struggling or finding it hard to focus on one particular. You know, maybe you need to focus on one particular thing and prioritize, I think that's what that one means. Do you understand what I mean? Or in terms of like the elements and your emotions, and not putting all your emotions into, you know, people, maybe a dozen different people who don't need your energy. Just focus on the really important people who need you right now. So does that make sense? Learning and understanding and memorizing what the elements are about is going to help you. First of all, when you pull a card, okay, so it's a coin card or a pentacle card, so it's going to be a little bit more practical. Possibly it could be about money. And then from there, you can sort of dive deeper into the different layers of the cards and what the story in the image is then telling you. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that very well, but fingers crossed I did okay. And the last sort of tip and trick is when you have a deck, and this is again with your minor arcana, I find the major arcana relatively easy to remember. It's when you get into your minor arcana and all your images start to kind of look the same. In this deck especially, in the Rider-Waite deck, there's a lot more variation from card to card, but if you have a deck that is like this, where your cards, I've got the 4 and the 2 of Swords, like don't really look a whole lot different. Obviously there's 4 swords on one and 2 swords on another, but what else is really different from them? Do you know what I mean? Like it gets a little overwhelming. And then even to the 9 of Swords, like, okay, there's 9 swords on there, but what actually, other than the number of swords on there, differentiates them? What is on there that is telling that story? One good way to do that, and I mean, it's a good thing to do, I guess, with the Rider-Waite deck as well, just to get to know your deck, is to lay them out on a table. I like to lay them out in order because I'm just a bit pedantic like that, but lay them all out on a table and look at them all at once, but obviously as individuals, and you'll be able to see then the subtle differences, well, at least in this deck, the subtle differences in them that are telling you that story, or that are trying to tell you that story and jog your memory so you can know that story on your own. So for example, the 8 of Swords compared to the 9 of Swords look very, very similar at a glance, but if you look at it more closely, the 9 of Swords has an all-seeing eye in the center and the 8 of Swords has a star. So obviously they mean something different. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I have not learned these cards yet, but they're gonna tell you, they're hinting and telling you something towards the story behind these cards. So there is differences in them. This one has a flower. This one has a heart that looks kind of like a rising sun, like the 6. So again, similar but different. They're all hinting towards what the story behind these cards are, which will then relate to what is you're asking, or you know, what guidance you're needing from them. So hopefully that also makes sense, and that is only going to really depend on which type of deck you get. If you want to go for a super minimalist one, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad deck by any means. Go with a deck that you really connect with. If you are a very visual person and you like to go with something, you know, visually appealing over the Rider-Waite deck, then go for something visually appealing. You can always get yourself a book or look up a website. There's plenty of places that you can find the images of the Rider-Waite deck to help you study alongside the decks that you have. But if you don't have a deck, I would recommend getting the Rider-Waite one because it just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. If I'd have known that before getting either of my 2 decks, no, I probably still would have got my 2 decks, honestly, because I just do like pretty things, and the Rider-Waite deck isn't necessarily pretty, but it tells you that story that is so, so important. So yeah, no deck is a bad deck, but some of them just tell the story a little differently. So just be aware of that. And like I said, you can get yourself a pretty cheap book. This one is great. It's about $25. It gives you a poster as well, but it's got a whole bunch of information on each individual card with color images, which I find really handy. A lot of books have just black and white images, but I find the colors also are really helpful as well. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know down below if it was. Also, if you have any other tips and tricks on how you have been learning or did learn, if you found anything that has been super helpful, let us know in the comments down below, because these two tips here, just really studying the imagery from the Rider-Waite deck, has made such a difference to me, honestly, and laying out my cards, because a lot of my cards in my main deck do look very similar. Laying them all out as well made such a difference, and I feel like just over the last couple of days I have such more of an understanding of these cards. I can't, like, it's just been so handy. I can't tell you. One last thing I probably should touch on is I think mention somewhere connecting with that deck, and for a lot of people that will just be visually what you're visually attracted to. Like, that's how I am. I'm a very visual person. I like pretty things. I'm a Taurus, so I do go for like the pretty things that stand out to me. That's how I initially connect with something. But you can also take your deck, your entire deck, keep it in its box or its pouch, however it came, to connect with it a little furthermore. A lot of people carry it around with them. They just throw it in their handbag and they carry it around with them everywhere for a couple of weeks. I personally like to put mine on either my bedside or my pillow in my bed and leave it there while I sleep to connect with it. I find doing that with crystals as well is really helpful. It sounds really strange, doesn't it, to connect with some pieces of card, but it actually really does help. It really does work to have it either by your bedside or carry it around with you in your pocket or in your handbag. Obviously a tarot deck is going to fit in your handbag, not your pocket, but a crystal will fit in your pocket. Anyway, and just pull a card every day. Even if you're not necessarily looking for any kind of guidance or asking any particular question, just pull a card and learn about it. Four of Swords. No idea what that means. Learn about it. Pull a card every day. Get into the habit of it. It only takes 10 minutes. Do try and actually, like, you know, meditate on it and use your intuition and cleanse your space and try to do it properly. I wouldn't recommend just doing it really quickly when you've got, you know, 20 other things nagging at you and you've only got 5 minutes before you get out the door. Take the time with it, but get into the habit of pulling one every day and just deciphering it. Ooh, the devil, look out. My last sort of tip or trick or recommendation or advice is to be grateful. Always be very thankful for any guidance that you do get from them. You get what you give. So be very grateful and be very thankful for whoever it is or whatever it is that is giving you guidance through these cards, because they don't have to. And, you know, you get what you give. So be careful what you put out there into the world. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Please let me know if it was down below. And also please let me know if I get anything wrong. Like I said, I've only been learning for a few months. I'm bound to mess up and slip up and get things wrong. So yeah, let's learn together in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you're interested in this kind of video, if you enjoyed it, if you're also learning, and subscribe as well if you haven't already, so I can see you in my next video, where I believe the next video will be more of a pick a card, let's look at the imagery and learn from it, and then read up about it and see what we learned and if what we felt and got from the imagery was, you know, what was in the actual text. So yeah, the next few videos will be definitely more about actual card learning, individual card learnings. Hopefully one day I hope one day to move on to the pick a card videos where I lay out 3 cards and you pick one and then we go through the cards. I love those videos. I'm so obsessed with watching. I've watched so many. I tell you what, there's one girl, Stargirl, the practical witch, is that her name? Stargirl, here on YouTube. I binge watched maybe a dozen of her pick a card videos, and the consistency I got in each of those videos from each pile of cards through each of those videos did not slip up once. It was consistent. They all had the same theme. Mind blown. I'm never not blown away by the guidance I get from these tarot decks and how freaking cheeky my guides can be. I tell ya, they're cheeky. I'm thanking them for strength and they give me the strength card. You're funny buggers. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Like this video if you did enjoy it and subscribe if you haven't already so I can see you in my next video. Bye guys.